Okay, as I say, this is not ESPN's 30 for 30, but however, this is the history of the New York Giants, 98 seasons. Okay, so this is my 98 for 98. If you say 98 seasons, and I don't think I'll get it done in 98 days, but I'm going to try to get this done before the beginning of the new season. So now we're forging ahead. We've reached season number 5 in the history of the New York Football Giants, which is the 1929 season, which was a remarkable season for the New York Giants. Sadly, this is one of, I found an article, and I'm going to basically read a lot of it, okay, which really pinpoints how this season was. And the article, it's called The Missing Rings, I believe it's called. The Giants were close. They finished 13-1-1. Didn't win the championship. And I'll go over, a lot of the games and all that and everything. But once again, this is the 1929 season, the 5th season in the history of the New York Football Giants. It's the 10th overall season in the history of the NFL. The NFL started in 1920. Okay, so there were 5 seasons ahead of the New York Giants. All right, so, but the Giants 1925, they came into the league. Right, they were 8-4-0. 1926, they were 8-4-1. In 1927, they went 11-1-1, won their first championship. 1928, they regressed. They regressed. They went 4-7-2. That was their first losing season, bad season. Their defense was not very good, and their offense was struggling a bit. So what happened was, I guess after the 28th season was over, the Detroit Wolverines, okay, were in financial trouble. So owner Tim Mara, okay, bought the team out, okay, to help their owner, okay, get out of financial trouble, bought the team out, okay, and brought some players over the New York Giants. But basically what he wanted was Benny Friedman, okay. Benny Friedman could, for his time, I got to remember back then, okay, the ball was not the way it is today. I mean, today they do everything, but basically, hand throw the ball for the quarterback. Whatever they can possibly do for the quarterback to make the quarterback's life, each ball is blown up to their certain specific, how many, what PSI do you want them at? You got your own balls, they're all covered up, nice and neat, and all of this. We'll keep them dry for you, and all. It wasn't nothing like that stuff back then. The balls were oblong. Back then, it was more like almost like throwing a basketball back then, right? I don't know if there were even any laces, okay? But Benny Friedman, for whatever reason, can throw a football. There were also rules back then, too, where if you threw an incomplete pass, you were penalized. If you threw an incomplete pass into the end zone and it landed in the end zone, it was a turnover. Okay? Yeah, I don't remember, but somewhere along the line they changed the rule. But for a while, you had to be at least 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage to throw. They did not want to open it up. So if you threw the ball, you're going to be penalized, basically, if you threw an incomplete pass. Okay, but Benny Friedman, Tim Mara, the owner of the Giants, bought out the Detroit Wolverines, who had Benny Friedman on it because they were in financial trouble. He took a few of their players, emerging with the Giants. He got Benny Friedman. He also got Leroy Andrews, okay, who was then in 1929 and 1930 was the Giants coach. Except for the final few games of the 1930 season, final 2 or 3 games of the 30 season, the final 2 or 3 games of the 1930 season, Benny Friedman wound up being coaching the Giants, okay? But Leroy Andrews, for the 1929 season, was the head coach of the New York Football Giants. The Giants, the defense was very good, but their offense was just phenomenal. Benny Friedman led the league. He had 20 touchdown passes, okay? It took into the 1940s for another, I think it was Sammy Baugh with the Washington Redskins, to get up to 20 touchdown passes in the season. And when that came, by that time, the ball was more passable, passing, right? So they, I said, but when Benny Friedman was almost kind of like throwing a basketball, right? Benny Friedman, he's the only player in NFL history to lead the league in touchdown passes and rushing touchdowns. Okay. Only person ever. Okay. So for some reason he didn't complete 60 or 70% of his passes, but he was up around 40 to 50%, which for back then was absolutely phenomenal. Okay. He could throw a ball. I mean, I'm listening to videos and stuff, and apparently his accuracy was just uncanny. He was very, very good. So Tim Mara went out and got him. Okay. Basically to bought the Detroit Wolverine team because they were in financial trouble. Merged some of their players with the Giants, and now the Giants had a really, really good team. Okay. And unfortunately, the Green Bay Packers were just a little bit better this one season. So the 1929 season, we got, there we are there. Nope. There we go. All right. So the 1929 season, the Green Bay, we got the Green Bay Packers. Let's see here. All right. Rule changes. The NFL added the field judge as the fourth game official. Ooh, okay. So they had 4 officials in the game. Right. The NFL 2019-29 season. 1929 NFL season was the 10th regular season in the history of the National Football League. Okay. It was the 5th for the Giants, the 10th for the NFL. The league increased back to 12 teams because in 1920, every year there was a different amount of teams. 1925, there was 20 teams. 26, there was 22 teams. 27 went down to 12 teams. 28, there was 10 teams. Now, 1929 went back up to 12 teams. Every season was a different amount of teams. Okay. They increased back to 12 teams from 10 in 1928 with the addition of the Staten Island Stapletons, the Orange Tornadoes, and the Minneapolis Red Jackets, and the re-entry of the Buffalo Bisons. The Pottsville Maroons became the Boston Bulldogs, and the New York Yankees folded, and the Detroit Wolverines merged into the New York Giants, with the New York Giants the surviving partner. Okay. Basically, because what I was hearing is that the Detroit Wolverines had financial troubles. Okay. And Tim Mara bought the team out and gave them the money, obviously, to their owner, so he got out of their financial woes. But on November 3rd, the Chicago Cardinals and the Providence Steamroller match became the first NFL game to be played at night under floodlights. Interesting. November 3rd, 1929. First game ever. Nighttime game. First Monday Night Football game. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers were named the NFL champions after finishing the season with the best record. They not only finished the best record, they were undefeated. They only had one tie. 0-0. Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, was it? I got to look. But let's see here. Yeah, the Green Bay Packers were 12-0-1. The Giants were 13-1-1. The Giants scored 312 points, which is absolutely no other team scored 300 points before. There's a couple other teams that scored over 200 points. No team in the history of the National Football League at that point scored 312 points. The Giants scored 312 points in 15 games, which is a phenomenal amount of points. The Green Bay Packers, their strength was their defense. They only gave up 22 points all season long. They gave up 3 touchdowns and 2 safeties all season long. 3 touchdowns. I don't think none of the points extra points were good. So the other teams missed all their point extras, point after touchdowns. But they also had 2 safeties on them as well. Okay. Said neither the Green Bay Packers nor the New York Giants lost a game during the first 9 weeks of the season. When they met in the Giants' Polo Grounds on November 24th, 1929, the Packers were 9-0-0. Giants were 8-0-0. Okay. So basically it came down to that game, which I'm going to go over in more detail. Okay. But that's what it came down to, that one game. Okay. Pretty much on November 24th, 1929 at the Polo Grounds between the Packers and the Giants. Pretty much whoever won that game won the championship, and you can figure out who won that game. So basically it was the team with the best winning percentage. The Green Bay Packers, they had one tie. Okay. Now, if this one tie, okay, against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets on November 28th, okay, if that one tie, that could have quite been 28, 29, 30. That could have been Thanksgiving. That might have been Thanksgiving. Quite possibly. That was on Thanksgiving, November 28th, 1929, at Frankfurt Stadium. Now, if the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets had somehow scored a couple of points, and if the Green Bay Packers lost that game, Okay. Remember, final score was 0-0. But if the Green Bay Packers lost that game, the Giants would have won because the Giants were 13-1. Okay. And the Green Bay Packers would have been 12-1. So the Giants would have had the better winning percentage. The Giants' winning percentage was 929. The Green Bay Packers' winning percentage obviously was 1,000 because they were 12-0-1. Ties did not count, okay, as a win and a loss as they do nowadays. Okay. But Benny Friedman was the main man back then. And the New York Giants they played 15 games. Okay. They only had 20, I believe I read it, they had 22 guys on the team play all season long. 22 guys. That's all they had. Okay. Simply amazing. Okay. It says here the Giants opened up the 1929 regular season in front of 9,000 fans at Knights of Columbus Stadium when they visited the Orange Tornadoes. The results were familiar in that the defensive battle lacked any potent or offensive genius. New York had a golden opportunity to take the lead early in the second quarter when Ray Flaherty, who jumped from the New York Yankees to the Giants late in 1928, intercepted a pass at the Giants' 45-yard line and returned it to the Orange 10. Tornadoes thwarted the New York on 2nd and goal and then intercepted a Benny Friedman throw. See, the one thing is that what helped Benny Friedman so much also wound up hurting the Giants as well. What helped them was his throwing, but also in some instances, it is what it is. But that's what hurt them as well too. Okay, so sometimes his passes were really, the amount of touchdown passes he had and everything were absolutely phenomenal. So that game, the first game, the Giants went up. After the the Tornadoes thwarted the New York on 2nd and goal after they intercepted a Benny Friedman throw. The Giants star had an opportunity to redeem himself, Benny Friedman, in the closing minutes of the game. Friedman drove the New York into orange territory, but his attempted field goal was blocked as time expired and the game ended 0-0. Okay, so that didn't really hurt him at all because the tie didn't really matter so much. Okay. It said, and then another defensive battle took place in front of the record throng of 14,000 people. That's a big crowd back then. In Providence, when the Giants visited defending champion Providence Steamroller. The Providence Steamroller had the best record in 1928. They were defending champions. Okay. Let's see. The contest is one of the most bitterly fought games ever seen at the Cyclodrome. Okay. The Cyclodrome. It was a stadium built for bicycling. Okay. The Giants' first touchdown of the year came early in the first quarter, and it was mostly a Friedman effort. He was set to thrive up with a 25-yard punt return before completing successive passes totaling 43 yards. Then they scored from 9 yards out on a Friedman point after was successful. That was all the scoring for the day, but there was plenty of action on the field. First-hand accounts described the Steamrollers' defense as being savage. The Giants drove twice more into goal-to-goal situations, many of the advances coming from Friedman off tackles, slants. But the Giants were halted on the 1 and 6 yard lines, respectively. Providence was never able to harness any momentum offensively as New York limited them to just 10 first downs, and the Giants won 7-0. Okay. Then Friedman, that was against Providence Steamroller. Then I guess it looks like the Staten Island Stapletons. Okay, this is an article called "The Missing Rings," 1929 for the New York Giants. So I'm going to just wind up reading some of it here. Friedman shared the spotlight with Jack Haggerty the following week at the Polo Grounds for the home opener versus the Staten Island Stapletons. Of the 30,000 spectators, approximately 5,000 enthusiastically supported the visitors. Friedman threw the Giants' first touchdown pass of the year in the second quarter, but Ken Strong's 50-yard touchdown run and point after gave Staten Island a 9-7 lead at the half. Haggerty sparked New York with a second-half kickoff return to the 30-yard line and 2 rushes of 11 and 25 yards, setting up a Friedman to Hap-Moran touchdown connection in the fourth quarter. Moran caught a scoring aerial from Haggerty to cap off the 19-9 win. So impressive was Haggerty that the New York Times tagged him the Ghost Haggerty, a moniker closely associated with the legendary Red Grange, the galloping ghost, Red Grange. Future Giant star Ken Strong drew acclaim for his effort both running and kicking. At the close of the third quarter, his punt from the Stapleton's 18-yard line flipped field position, and the ball was down on the New York 20. Wow. Very impressive. There was a, 32, 42, like 62-yard punt. Okay. Pretty impressive. It said the New York Times estimated the ball traveled close to 75 yards in the air. So I guess if he was behind the line of scrimmage and he punted it, 75 yards in the air. Pretty impressive. All right. So then the Giants, let's see here. The Giants' momentum carried over into next week's game against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. The former New York Governor Al Smith was among the 30,000 fans at the Polo Grounds who were treated to a rare offensive showcase. But this offensive showcase, was going to be the norm as the season wore on. You'll see. I mean, they just started putting up. It was weird because they scored over 300 points in 15 games. The first 2 weeks, they scored a grand total of 7 points. After that, the floodgates kind of opened up, and they just started scoring, and they scored. I tell you what. Let's see. Benny Friedman, the Giants' passing wizard, was the man behind the New York surge. Wrote the New York Times in the second quarter, Friedman suddenly began to complete passes all over the lot, which included scoring strikes of 18 yards, 43 yards, 25 yards, leading a 19-0 halftime lead. The Giants switched to the ground game, okay? But the big plays kept coming. Mule Wilson romped 55 yards for a touchdown in the fourth quarter. The center, Mickey Murtaugh, was given a turn in the backfield and rambled in another 33 yards for a touchdown. Frankfurt only completed 2 passes for 12 yards in the afternoon, while the Giants front stonewalled the run in the 32-0 victory. Okay, so I mean, the points just started coming after this. Then after that, they beat the Providence Steamroller 19-0. The Chicago Bears came and they beat them 26-14. I mean, they were just scoring some points. Okay. Let's see. After they beat the Bears, okay, the road trip resumed just 2 days later in Buffalo. So I mean, and this happened too. This happened a lot. Okay, they played the Chicago Bears November 3rd in Chicago. They beat them 26-14. 2 days later on Tuesday, they played the Buffalo Bison. 2 days later, they played Sunday and then Tuesday. Crazy. Okay. Let's see. The road trip 2 days later, and they beat the Bison 45-6 at Bison Stadium. New York's first scoring drive took 2 plays, both Friedman to Flaherty connections. So I mean, let's see. Haggerty. Let's see. Things were so bleak for the Bisons that after they scored their only touchdown, Haggerty returned the kickoff 97 yards for another Giants touchdown. I mean, 5 days later, on the following Sunday, the Giants soundly defeated the Orange Tornadoes 22-0. The Giants' record now all of a sudden was 7-0-1. Then there was a rematch with the Bears at the Polo Grounds, was shockingly similar to the first game. Shockingly similar to the game they just played against the Bison. Chicago came to New York on a skid, having lost to Green Bay and Frankfurt, and nobody expected anything but a stout effort from George Halas' squad. The looming threat of bad weather limited the crowd to just 15,000 people. But the ones who braved the elements were rewarded with a record performance. The Friedman aerial circus was unstoppable. Benny Friedman was the man. He played for the Giants for 3 seasons, 29, 30, and 31. The heavy air above the Polo Grounds was filled with 49 New York pass attempts. 49. Okay. 5 resulting in touchdowns. 4 of those scoring tosses came from the arm of Friedman and 1 by Moran, who was also on the receiving end of 2 of those scores. I mean, it was just absolutely just crazy. And let's see here. Friedman officially or unofficially was 13 out of 25. Oh, let's see here. In the first half. He was in the first half. That's in 1.5. He was 13 out of 25. He threw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. While the Bears, as a team, were 11 for 24 and intercepted 4 times. When it was over, the New York Giants beat the Chicago Bears 34-0. So after the Giants beat the Bears 34-0, they stood at 8-0-1. The next game basically was the one to decide the championship. Okay, that's when the Green Bay Packers came to town. Says showdown. Okay, there was considerable buzz anticipating next week's matchup against Green Bay. The 9-0 Packers were tied atop the standings with the 8-0 Giants. Now, don't forget, I mean, the ties didn't count. So the Packers were undefeated, 9-0. The Giants were undefeated. They were 8-0. Basically, whoever won was going to be the winner. Okay. Green Bay's strength was their defense. They gave up 22 points all season long. Absolutely phenomenal. Okay. Cal Hubbard had been moved inside to tackle position where he continued to wreak havoc. Also on the line were future Hall of Fame guard Mike Mikulski and All-Pro and Labby Dilwig. I love some of these names. Halfback Johnny Blood McNally, who played end on defense, would also be enshrined in Canton, along with the head coach Curly Lambeau, who had finally hung up his cleats and was on the sideline full time. Green Bay went straight at the Giants on the cold, muddy field. Okay. Hubbard punched holes in his former team's first line of defense and fullback Bo Melendo's advances. The Polo Grounds crowd of 25,000 remained enthusiastic despite Green Bay taking an early 7-0 lead. Okay. The Giants had an opportunity to answer when Benny Friedman connected with Flaherty for a 65-yard gain. Okay. But once again, this is one of those things I was talking about. What got Benny Friedman his success also wound up hurting him. Okay. Flaherty was headed for the end zone until he was caught from behind, okay, by Blood McNally and dragged down at the 10-yard line. It was a significant play, though, as Friedman's next pass attempt was intercepted and the 7-0 score held. All right, so they got down to the 10-yard line, didn't even get any points out of it. All right, the remainder of the first half was scoreless while both powerful lines slugged it out. Let's see here. Their punter kept the Packers out of danger. He had a 60 and a 70-yard punt. So that's just flipping the field. Friedman and the Giants struggled to find the rhythm of their passing game that had propelled their success over the past 7 games. Even when Friedman wasn't feeling the rush of Green Bay's line, his favorite target, Flaherty, struggled to find open space against his counterpart, Blood McNally. All right, so he was covered very well. All right. Green Bay controlled most of the first 30 minutes of action, but New York fought back. In the third quarter, Benny Friedman completed 3 passes. Okay. And he ran the ball a couple times on a 70-yard drive. Plansky caught the final pass in the end zone to trim the lead to 7-6. Unfortunately, Benny Friedman missed the extra point. The game resumed its tenor from the first half as the Lions engaged in the contest of will. The New York passing attack struggled under Packers' pass rush while Green Bay ran plunges and slants into the New York Giants defense. Let's see. The balance of the game tipped suddenly in the fourth quarter. New York seemed to have stopped an advance on third down and set up for a return. Having witnessed the booming punts of the Packers consistent all day, the Giants dropped back on fourth down to ready themselves for a return, which wound up costing them. Okay. The Packers, Llewellyn received the snap for a punt, skillfully miming a punting motion and then connected with Blood McNally on a 26-yard pass. It was a fake punt connected on a pass. The gain in field position was secondary to the emotional blow it dealt to the Giants. They sagged while Green Bay surged. Melendo and McRyan ran with confidence through the Giants' front wall and finished the 80-yard drive with a touchdown run and a 14-6 lead. And don't forget, back then, a 14-6 lead was 2 scores, not 1 like it is today. Benny Friedman, unfortunately, once again, the fake punt hurt the Giants. If they got the ball back, maybe the Packers don't score that second touchdown. The Giants threw an interception when they were down to the 10-yard line. They missed an extra point. Okay. And once again, what helped Benny Friedman also hurt Benny Friedman. Benny Friedman's comeback bid ended in a disaster because they were down by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. They had to throw the football. They couldn't run the ball. They had to throw. So, harassed in a collapsing pocket, he was intercepted by middle guard Jug Earp. Okay, there you go. The Packers kept the ball on the ground, consuming both time and yards. They put the game away when Blood McAnally went over for the touchdown, finishing the 37-yard drive and the Giants bid for first place. Because basically the Packers won 20-6. That was 3 scores. The Giants had to score 3 times. That wasn't happening. Okay. And the Packers had a 10-0 record while the Giants slipped to 8-1-1. Okay. But I mean, the Giants, it says here, they finished strong. Okay. Let's see. The Giants handled rival the Staten Island Stapletons after that 21-7. Okay. While Green Bay showed some signs of exhaustion as their road trip continued, the game account from Frankfurt noted the Packers exhibited signs of fatigue after their strenuous effort at the Polo Grounds. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets advanced to the Packers' 2-yard line in the first quarter before turning the ball over. In the fourth quarter, the final promising drive by Frankfurt ended with a blocked field goal. The game ended in a 0-0 tie, and the Packers still sported a perfect 1,000 winning percentage. As I said, right, they advanced to the 2-yard line, and they turned the ball over. I guess they tried for a touchdown instead of trying to kick a field goal. And in the final quarter, a promising drive and a block. So they kicked field goals. So Frankfurt, so the Packers were tired. They were exhausted, they're tired, all of that and everything. And apparently, they didn't score any points. It was 0-0 against Frankfurt. Had Frankfurt kicked a field goal in the first quarter, they would have won the game 3-0. Okay. Or if that field goal at the end wasn't blocked, they might have won the game 3-0. All right. The Packers would have wound up, let's see here. Packers would have wound up 11-1. The Giants would have been 13-1. The Giants, on the winning percentage, would have had the better winning percentage, and they would have won the 1929. That's why this is one of those missing rings. Okay, because the Packers got lucky. Okay, they got lucky in that one game. Okay. But I mean, then after that, the rest of the season, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that after this, the rest of the season, the Packers just kicked butt. Yeah. After the Frankfurt Yellow Jacket game, which I think it looks like it was on Thanksgiving, okay, which was November 28th. Okay. The Frankfurt Yellow Jacket was 0-0. The Green Bay Packers had 2 more games. They beat the Providence Steamroller 25-0. And the final game of the season in Chicago at Wrigley Field, they beat the Bears 25-0 to finish at 12-0-1. Like I said, but that one game, the Green Bay Packers, November 28th at Frankfurt Stadium against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, wound up in a 0-0 tie. The team had been on the road. Actually, oh my goodness, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Their final 8 games of the season were all on the road. So they played the Giants on November 24th. 4 days later, looks like on Thanksgiving, they played they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets on Thanksgiving in Frankfurt. Frankfurt got to the 2-yard line, and they tried for a touchdown instead of kicking a field goal. I don't know. Then toward the end of the game, they had a field goal attempt blocked. Had Frankfurt connected on one of those field goal tries, Frankfurt would have won 3-0. The Giants would have won the championship, but it was not meant to be. That's why this article here I'm reading is from the New York Giants 1929 season, The Missing Rings. 1 field goal, a blocked field goal. The Giants ended strong. I mean, their final game, the final few games, they played the Chicago Cardinals, beat them 24-21. Then they had their home and home, and they did this every year. 4 out of 5 years, they had this home and home with the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, which is what it was is that Frankfurt did not play home games on Sunday. Their home games were on Saturday. Okay, so what the Giants did, 4 out of the 5 years, from 25 to 29, 4 out of the 5 years, there was 1 year that the Giants didn't play Frankfurt on back-to-back days. Okay, but they did here in 1929. Okay, Saturday, December 7th in Frankfurt. Okay, Saturday. Frankfurt played their home games on Saturday. The Giants played in Frankfurt and beat them 12-0. The very next day, on Sunday, December 8th, the Giants at Frankfurt played in the Polo Grounds. The Giants won 31-0. Okay. Then the final game of the season was December 15th. Now the Green Bay Packers, they finished their final game was December 8th at Chicago. Okay. The following week, the Bears played the Giants, okay, and the Giants beat the Bears 14-9. Okay, so the Giants finished the season at 13-1-1, okay, while the Packers were named the champions. Okay, they were 12-0-1, but they played their last 8 games, it looks like, on the road. Okay, but the Packers had a phenomenal defense. Okay, they scored a lot of points, but Benny Friedman, the New York Giants that year, okay, I mean, just amazing amount of points that they scored. Their point differential was unbelievable. They scored 312 points. Absolutely phenomenal. What is it? 226 points differential? I mean, that's just absolutely crazy. They scored 312 points, the Giants. They gave up only 86. Okay, but that one, actually, or you can say, the one game or the 2 games, however you want to look at it, right? The Giants had a chance. They had the Packers at the Polo Grounds. The Giants won that game. The Giants would have been the champions, right? But they got down to the 10-yard line, right? Benny Friedman throws an interception, thwarts a drive. Giants possibly could have had a touchdown there, right? The Giants missed an extra point. Also, toward the end of the game, when the Giants are down 14-6, Benny Friedman has to throw the ball because they're down by 2 scores and under a heavy pass rush. He throws an interception. Packers pick it off, get at the 37-yard line. They march down, score another touchdown, put the game out of reach. So it is what it is. I mean, the Packers were probably the better team. The Giants could certainly score more points, that's for sure. But unfortunately, what got Benny Friedman and the Giants all those points, all actually in some instances also wound up hurting them. But 1929 for the New York Football Giants was a very, very successful season. And Leroy Andrews was the coach. It was his first season as the head coach. He would also be the coach of the Giants for most of the 1930 season. Benny Friedman would coach the Giants for the final 2 or 3 games of the 1930 season as well. So the next few seasons, the next bunch of seasons for the Giants, once we get into the 30s, the 30s were very, very good for the Giants. They didn't start championship games until 1933, but once 33 rolled around, the Giants were in 1933, they were in the championship game. 1934, they were in a championship game. 1935, 1938, 1939. So the Giants won a lot of championship games once we got into the 30s. So, from 29 to, 29 to, I'm going to say 29 to 46 were some very good years for the Giants. Unfortunately, they only won 2 championships then. Unfortunately, but from 1929 to 46, the New York Football Giants gave us not that anybody was alive, but a lot of good memories, or a lot of good things to read, shall we say. But they had a lot of good football from 1929 to 1946. The New York Giants had some very good football, and the 1929 season was no exception. They finished 13-1-1, but unfortunately, they did not win the NFL championship. Well, guys, I'll be back again tomorrow night. Okay, with the 1930 season of the New York Football Giants, which just happened to be the 6th season in the history of the New York Football Giants. I'll see you then.